So I want to welcome to our Pachamama Alliance gathering two amazing humans that live in our local Santa Cruz area who are responsible for actually writing the California Green New Deal and strategizing a grassroots campaign that can actually see it passed in our state in a relatively short time if we all come together to work for it. So we're honored to learn from the heart of this amazing process what it is, how it can change our entire lives, how we can participate and contribute to its success. I anticipate this gathering will leave as many questions unanswered as answered, and I welcome that. That's wonderful because it is comprehensive, and with just 30 minutes that our two guests are allotted, they really can't do justice, but hopefully awaken our curiosity and more our commitment, because we will now know after 30 minutes, probably more than anyone else in our community, about what's happening right out of our local Romero Institute. Sara Nelson is the co-founder of Romero Institute with her husband and partner, Danny Sheehan. Sara is an amazing master organizer and the glue that holds everything together at Romero. In addition to an astute strategist and a woman of great intellect, I think her greatest attribute is her heart, a huge heart, a dear, dear friend and ally in our movement to create a viable living future for our whole human family. Sara will introduce Jon Conway, who is his writing is a major intellectual accomplishment. And I know Jon is a PhD grad of UC Santa Barbara and an amazing capture for Romero, amazing person to have on staff. So Sara, take it away. You need to unmute. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
So thank you for inviting us to be with you tonight. There's nothing we like more to do now than to share with people a message of hope. And that's what we see the Green New Deal of California as a message of hope. It's the only place in the country that we think something like this could pass in the near future. We don't have a lot of confidence in what's going on in Washington. And we don't know what's going to happen. We don't even know if our current president is going to be reelected. So, and he is a serious, as you know, problem for anything that has to do with the environment. So we need a foothold someplace, a foothold for the solution. And it has to be a big solution because COVID is a serious problem and climate is as well. We are in a climate emergency, just like we're in a COVID emergency, but not everybody totally realizes it. But Mother Nature will continue to escalate the impacts of climate. So while we went through the Paradise fires and there have been hurricanes and tornadoes and all kinds of things, it will increase because there's a lot of carbon in the atmosphere. And things are heating up, et cetera. So what we are devoted to is assembling in collaboration with a lot of other people, experts, organizations, networks, and consultants, the plan that would actually be scientifically and technically doable and constitutionally in sync with the law, and just and humane, that this plan would get us to carbon neutral by 2035, not by 2050, not by 2040, but by 2035. So it's a sort of 10 to 12 year plan that would be realistic. That is something that could be shared with other states and even other countries because California is respected by other countries. And I know it may seem to you, well, we've got this Romero group in Santa Cruz. It has 18 people in it. How could you even think of doing something like that? But we have a history of 45 to 50 years of work where we have done, with a small group of people, some very significant things, historic legal actions that have set precedents, that have changed the law permanently for people. A number of those at the level of the Supreme Court. We've also done major national education and organizing campaigns, because we were based in Washington, D.C. for 20 years. And we've worked with a lot of major constituencies. We stopped the building of all future nuclear power plants, privately owned nuclear power plants, as of 1979 with the Karen Silkwood case. Danny, in an earlier case before I met him, he established the right of newspaper reporters to protect their sources at the level of the Supreme Court. We exposed the Iran-Contra scandal when he filed a lawsuit 6 months before everybody knew there was a scandal. And the lawsuit was so full of accurate information that the administration, then the Reagan administration, felt that they had to have a press conference and say to people, we have a problem. We have a problem of tow missiles being sold by us to Iran, and that money being given to the Contras, even though the Congress has passed a law saying we can't give money to the Contras. So it was a huge constitutional crisis, and with a lot of drug smuggling to support it, and political assassination programs, et cetera. And it became a gigantic issue, but it probably wouldn't have happened without the filing of that lawsuit. So we're not afraid to just hunker down and start and do the work and reach out to everybody else who can help and just do it, because people make problems and people solve them. You know, people create messes and other people work on solutions. It's just the way it's always been. And so we don't have to be afraid. We don't have to think. And if anybody's been watching the administration's briefings, you know that we don't have people at the helm that know what they're doing. So it's really up to all of us to do what we can to steer this ship out of the direction we're, you know, headed for the iceberg. And we have to turn the ship. So the I've got to be careful of time here. To give you just a quick, Jon is going to go through the kind of sectors of the bill. We have a 50-page plan written primarily by Jon. We have a 4-page summary written by Jon. He's a fabulous human being, and he is doing the hard intellectual work of taking all the information, some of which was developed by Danny Sheehan, who's a constitutional attorney who is all law is law. So policy is usually done by lawyers. So he's not intimidated by setting forth principles for policies. So he set forth a lot of this. Jon took it and turned it into a plan and also an executive summary. Now we are going into the phase of actually developing the legislation. That means, you know, and the bill may end up being 500 pages long, 400, who knows, because it's got a lot of sections. And we're reaching out. We're about to hire a person with tremendous experience in both running campaigns, statewide campaigns, and also in developing policy around an issue. Now, this is sort of a multi-issue bill, but this is a person that is going to be really helpful in this whole process. We have also spoken with a woman who's a lobbyist in Sacramento, and we are in dialogue with her to bring her on so that she can help us navigate how you make the relationships in Sacramento and how you choose, you know, what order you put those in and who you ask to be your sponsors, et cetera. And
quiet, Shadi.
I think we have a little, can you hear her? Is she? Oh, is she blowing out our? Danny, can you do something about it? So she could be extremely helpful in this process, and I'm about to have a whole bunch of Zooms with people in the agricultural field, because agriculture is such an important component of this. Because we want to put the policies together for not putting carbons up and for also drawing it down. So some of the things in the bill will be focused on not putting it up, and others will be focused on bringing it down. And land land actually can bring as much or more down than forests do. But we do have to restore the land. It has to be full of microbes and living things. And if it is, it'll bring down tons of carbon. So, and there are people working on this. And so we want to work with them, and they want us to take their research and their information and put it into the Green New Deal. And that's the way it's going to work, with transportation, with farming, with the ocean, with the nuclear waste, all these things. There are people already that have spent their life working on these issues. And we're now reaching out to them so they can work with us and collaborate, and we can get the best stuff in there that'll actually work by 2035. Now, I want to turn this over to Jon to tell you about what the different sectors are in the executive summary, and give you some idea of how it might change our lives in each one of these sectors. And remember, when you remember, I want to tell you one more thing. When Gavin Newsom made his State of the State speech in February of this year, which is like the State of the Union for the president. It was in February. I was in a parking lot, and I just sat there for 45 minutes and listened to him. It was a fantastic speech. And he declared a state of emergency on homelessness, and he laid out the plan that a council had researched and given to him about what needed to be done about it. And in this plan, there were all these things that he was going to do to break through the bureaucracy and change the leasing laws and get, work with landowners and building owners to get open spaces for the homeless. All these things were going to just get moved. Boom, boom, boom. That's what we need with the Green New Deal. We need to think that if you declare a state of emergency and you are the governor or you are the president and you have a state of emergency, you are able to do things that you wouldn't normally be able to do. You can move money, set up new agencies, do all this. And that's what we're going to need. And I was so happy to hear him, because it's just paved the way for what it is we're going to have to do. And we're going to have to do it with COVID, because COVID has just multiplied the problem so seriously with all the unemployed people. And I don't know how many people are going to be unemployed by September. So all of that, this is more like a New Deal that we have to do, not just a Green New Deal to bring down the carbon and keep it from going up. Now we have to do a full-on New Deal, which is what Roosevelt did, so that people can get back to work, and we can have a healthy, clean economy, and we can have a new health system and all of that. So it's a big job, but that's okay. We can do it if we work together. And Jon, will you please share, out of all your work that you've done, some of this key information so they can kind of get a feel for the realities of it?
Yes, absolutely. So I've got 15 minutes to go through 13 chapters, so I've got my little timer here, and hopefully I'm not talking a million miles a minute. But I think what the most efficient way to do this would be
We lost you there for a minute.
Oh, you lost me? Can you hear me?
There you are.
Okay.
You're on now.
Okay.
Okay. I tried to share my screen so that I could share the document with you, but it looks like that's not going to work. So I'll just go through.
I don't think that's working.
You disappear when you click it.
Yeah, well, I will not do that. Can you see me? I've got it in front of the Zoom window.
No, we see you, but we don't see the document. It's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so all right. So we've got, like I said, 13 chapters, and we're gonna just go through kind of highlights from each chapter, because possibly go through all 50 pages in this short amount of time.
Jon, do you have something on? It's reverberating your voice.
Yeah, it's all bubbly.
All bubbly. I have a fan here going. Let me see if I can turn that off. Is that any better?
No, it's still bubbly.
Let me unplug my headphones and see if
that would be good.
Talk.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah. I think you may have a rolling mouse, and that the rolling mouse is what making the noise.
Oh, I don't have anything This is just my laptop on a table right now.
You're okay. Go ahead.
Okay, now it's okay. Now your
It's
voice
okay?
is okay.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep going then. Okay. So let's see. So I guess we should start at the beginning then. The
Yeah.
first chapter is kind of the first section. Sorry, is it basically sets the standard for that is the end target for what we're trying to accomplish with this in terms of our greenhouse gas emission goals. And we tried to be as kind of forward-leaning and progressive as possible, so that we can push efforts faster than they're going now, because they desperately need that. So what we have said is that we'd like to see an 80% reduction in our greenhouse gas emissions below a 1990 baseline level, which is the level that's being used, by 2028. So 80% by 2028, net zero by 2030, and annual net negative carbon sequestration rates equal to 10% of the 1990 baseline level by 2035. So 80% by 2080, net zero by 2030, and then 10% below within the next 5 years. And that's, it's a pretty ambitious goal, but it's something that we believe that California can meet and should meet in order to accelerate climate action, not only in our state, but around the globe too. The second section is on governance, and we had this, so we kind of, the first section we set the end target, and now we have to figure out how we shape our system, that we have our governance structure in the state of California. How can we improve that so that we can actually accomplish all the things that the Green New Deal needs to accomplish? So first things first, I think Sara mentioned already, we need to declare an emergency status, because that opens up a whole host of possibilities for the governor and the legislature to pass quickly sweeping measures. And then another thing that we felt kind of was a highlight of the governance section was the establishment of climate score ratings for proposed pieces of legislation for the state. So basically saying, if anytime that the bill is introduced into the legislature, that it has to receive a score based on basically 3 umbrella categories, which these are the same categories that I used in writing this California Green New Deal framework, which are: is it sustainable, is it equitable, and does it improve the resilience of the state to the effects of the climate crisis? And if, basically, if the idea is if you get below a certain score, then you just can't pass that bill. And that's, pretty strictly saying, here's where we want California to go, and here's where we don't want it to go. The third section is on financing, so how are we going to pay for all this? And really, the way that we've been doing it so far is through the cap and trade program. We've been financing a lot of our climate action within the state through the cap and trade program. But the cap and trade program is fundamentally flawed. It's fundamentally broken in that it allows corporations to pay to pollute. And that simply is a model that we cannot continue to perpetuate. And additionally, by California putting all of its eggs in the cap and trade basket, it doesn't allow us to fix what's wrong with that basket. It doesn't allow us to take the boat out on the dry dock and fix it up and get it working right. So what we need to do is to divert our funding, get our funding from elsewhere. So what we propose is actually an effort that's been going on within the state for the last few years. Was an effort to set up California green bonds. So basically a bond program, and we want to basically, if the world's 5th largest economy says we want renewable energy, we want sustainable climate solutions, and we're willing to put our entire economy behind that, then that creates a very powerful incentive for investors to come and purchase these bonds so that we can have the funding that we need. Next section, just moving right along, is the workforce. So now we've got our governance system in better shape, and we've figured out basically how we're going to fund this. So now we need to figure out who's going to actually be doing this work. And what we want to see is the revitalization of the California Green Corps. Well, I guess not revitalization. to the California Green Corps, which would be administered through the California Labor and Workforce Development Agency, which would be a new or an expanded agency under this plan. And what we would want to see is basically a program where anybody could walk into their local California Green Corp office and say, I want to work in geothermal energy, and I want to help operate a geothermal plant, and then they would design a curriculum, or place you in a curriculum that was designed for that process. Give you housing, give you healthcare, and then set you up with a job when you're done. And that just very directly produce a funnel to get all these people that now with COVID are unemployed. There's a tremendous amount of untapped labor potential, and also just I think all the youth that are coming out and graduating now and looking for jobs and saying, how can I participate in this economy in a way that is meaningful and actually helpful and beneficial to society instead of harmful to it. I think that there would be a lot of young people that would be very interested in doing this kind of thing. So, and then next section, education. Now, how do we meet the challenges of educating a populace that will result in a society that is sustainable, equitable, and resilient to climate change? And one of the things that we wanted to highlight from this section was the revitalization of California community colleges. So we have a good community college network in California that we believe can serve as local centers of public information, community leadership, and basically as a way for the community to have the knowledge essential for the general public to achieve the structural changes, community actions required for the challenges of a changing climate. So all that stuff is really important background, all those 5 sections, but not really talking so much about actually reducing carbon emissions. And so now we're going to get into that with the transportation section, which, as you probably know, the majority of our state's emissions come from the transportation sector. So what we want to see is a fossil fuel burning automobile ban by 2025. So no commercial or private automobile trucks, buses, or any other means of transportation can be registered with the Department of Motor Vehicles if they burn fossil fuels. So, and then we'd have to create a whole system of ways, like expanding the Cash for Clunkers program, actually creating expanded biofuel access, electric vehicle marketing, all kinds of stuff. But just kind of having that as a goal of getting off fossil fuel burning cars, because we have to. And then our next section here is community planning. So how do we want to think about and plan for the way that our communities operate and function in our society? And so this covers a pretty broad sweep of topics, from building emission standards to something that I really like from this section, which is the Regional Resilience Network and Community Resilience Centers. And I think that this is something that I think maybe 5 years ago, it would have been more difficult to imagine kind of this in place, but with the fires that have been happening, and then now, of course, the COVID crisis, having some kind of statewide regional resiliency program where basically every city or county has a coordinated plan of disaster response and prevention recovery, and then specific physical locations that people can go to have their needs be met, whether that's clothing, food, medical services, et cetera, et cetera. So something that really makes our society much more resilient than it has been proven to be. Agriculture and food security is the next section. So this is California is a huge agricultural state, so we have this tremendous potential to do something that really no one else is doing, which is using our soil as a way to sequester carbon from the atmosphere, while also producing a whole variety of co-benefits like increased fertility of the soil, reduced need for pesticides and artificial fertilizers, and you get a lot of things from doing that. And so we have a huge amount of rangeland and grasslands that we can use in the state to to sequester carbon from the atmosphere. So we want to see that. We want to see a central seed supplier. So rather than having these big corporations like Monsanto control the patents to species, which seems crazy, but rather having kind of a more farmer-focused seed supplier that is run by the state that provides seeds at low to no cost, which really would unlock a lot of potential for smaller farms. Got 3 minutes here and a few more chapters, so I'm going to go pace a little. Although this is one of my favorite sections, which is the energy section. And this is something that I really thought a lot about. How do we fix our energy system in the state from this top-down model where we have these big organizations like the Public Utilities Commission and the grid operator Kaizo that basically make decisions, buy power for everyone, and it just kind of trickles down that way. Because that's completely it does not operate with operate nicely with renewables, or what we call grid edge resources, which produce power from the bottom and then has to kind of percolate back up. So we need to flip the entire system on its head, and it's hard to summarize in 30 seconds. But basically, it would be a system of layers where each community, so you could have something as small as like a warehouse or a business, or it could be a neighborhood, or a city block, where that would be a single unit, a single layer that would be responsible for ensuring that it had enough power. So with solar panels and batteries and wind turbines or whatever, we say we have enough power, or we need 100 kilowatts of extra power for Tuesday. So then they would go up to the next level, and then the next level, and then the next level. If you want a more in-depth discussion of this, I've been doing a series of radio interviews on KSQD here in town, Good News Santa Cruz, with Christine Barrington. So if you want to a little bit more leisurely discussion of this topic, then I encourage you to check that out. But I've got to move on to the industry section. So this section really tries to address how we as a society use industry, because right now it's set up to benefit basically the production of money. Well, really it needs to benefit the lives of the humans that operate the society. So right now our industrial sector emissions mostly come from fossil fuel production, which is something that we need to immediately stop. And so that we'd like to see a fossil fuel production ban. And then just, in general, greater environmental accountability of corporations. So making a system that is hostile to bad actors, to antisocial corporations and businesses. And I think, what's been going on with PG&E is a pretty good example of how we need to kind of fix our private-public interactions. Second to last, waste management. What we really, the goal of this section is, that's my timer, is to promote a circular economy in California. So increasing the landfill diversion rate for compostable and organic materials to 100% by 2030, banning the production and sale of single-use plastics and things like that. Basically making, rethinking how we buy and sell things so that things are more robust and durable and more repairable for the average person, rather than just this use once and discard kind of thing that we've got going on now. And then finally, water. This is, if anybody knows anything about water rights in California, you know that this is a huge mess, and I really kind of try to bust my brains out in this section. But I was helped by the fact that the legal framework for how water rights are allocated in California is that the use of that water must be reasonable and beneficial. And that has been interpreted differently in the past, but now under the changes that the climate crisis is bringing, I think that there's a lot of potential to really think deep along about how we allocate water, not to just growing almond trees or whatever that they're going to chop down and burn when the price of almond milk dips. So those are the 13 chapters, and I'm a little over time, and I apologize, but I'd be happy to take questions when we're
Thank you, John. Thank you so much. And thank you, Sarah. We're going into the section now, and feel free, as Derek just did, if you have ideas you want to put in the chat box about questions or about things you should be included. If we don't get to them during this forum, it will get to John and Sarah, okay? We can, and to all of us, each other. So the next section is Derek's going to break us up into breakout rooms. We had originally planned.
I posted a link to an article about the use of the arts during the original 1930s New Deal, and I think it would be really important to incorporate some of those same ideas. And of course, now we're talking, you know, film and social media and everything else, but I think some funding to help create kind of a cultural and social consensus is a really good idea.
And Danny and Sarah actually have thought about that, and that's where the Green Corps comes in, just so you know.
Great. And the other is, and again, you know, John didn't have a whole lot of time to go into details that may be addressed in the plan, but you know, we really need to transform our cities and towns in order to have, you know, a landscape, an urban landscape that works without high inputs of energy. And, you know, it's no secret. I mean, the information of how to do that, and exactly a lot of examples are already available. I just had the pleasure of teaching a workshop on that subject, and it's striking how many opportunities there are. And a lot of them you can accomplish with simple changes of rules and paint. So, you know, those things need to happen.
Okay, Michelle, take us away.
Okay. And so, sorry, I'm trying to manage too many things at once here. So what we'd like to do is to have people raise their hand, and we're just going to have this